Hi, everybody, and welcome to the KubeStellar Community Meeting for Thursday, October 5th, 2023. Thank you all for joining. This is a recorded meeting. If you would rather watch this in replay and not be on a recording, please drop the call now and join us when it gets posted on our YouTube channel. And please turn off your camera if you wish not to be recorded on camera. I'm going to share. I put a link in the chat which relates to our Google Doc where we keep our agenda. I'll go ahead and share that on the screen now. Okay. Get rid of. Okay. All right. So you can all see that. So if you haven't done so already and you're seeing this meeting, you would like to go to join us, KubeStellar.io/join us. And you will go to a Google group, join that group. You will then get access to this meeting notes, and all the other artifacts that we create. So let's get started. First things first, I'll read our contributor code of conduct. So here's that link that you need to join us. Why is it? Oh, there it is. Okay. So if you need to join us, you can do that there. KubeStellar.io/join us. You can use _us or just join us. Okay. So our contributor code of conduct, as contributors and maintainers in the CNCF community and in the interest of fostering an open and welcoming community, we pledge to respect all people who contribute through reporting issues, posting feature requests, updating documentation, submitting pull requests or patches, and other activities. We are committed to making participation in the CNCF community a harassment-free experience for everyone, regardless of level of experience, gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, disability, personal appearance, body size, race, ethnicity, age, religion, or nationality. Basically, that just means everybody please be nice to each other. If we have any new folks that are on the call now, if you'd like to introduce yourself, that you're more than welcome to. I'll leave a pause. Okay. All right, let's get on with our agenda. I think that there's a couple of things here that are carryovers from last time, but there's some new stuff too. So let's talk a little bit about decoupling of KCP. Do we have anybody on here that can represent that? I don't think so. Okay, so I can give a small update on where we're at. In terms of the space framework, we're making good progress. I think that we'll be decoupled from KCP and be able to show the ability to use kind or one of our partner projects in our organization called KubeFlex for the use of logical clusters sometime around the mid-November timeframe. So look forward to seeing that. This month, we're spending the balance of it talking through a few PRs that were carryovers from Sprint 4. We've just started Sprint 5 this week. One of the new topics that have come front and center is Kube-bind, and this is to replace the KCP's API export and binding functionality. So we've got some work going on there, and so some of that is taking up some of the team's time as well. But the team is overall making good progress, so I think that's a good thing to report. The latest in Sprint 5 shows that there's about 11 or so issues that are scheduled for this sprint and about 4 or 5 PRs that are already in queue and waiting for review. All right, so here we have next is an update on containerization. So let's get an update from Franco and team.
Sure. So we did a lot of progress on this. First, we developed a new container that allows to separate an Helm chart that allows to separate the KubeStellar controllers into different, runtime containers into a pod, as well as KCP into a separate runtime container in the same KubeStellar pod. We are now supporting restart of the pod and container, where KCP comes back holding this previous state, and with credential that allows the various controllers to reconnect to it. We still have a small issue where the user outside of outside of the cluster or outside of the pod, I would say, cannot reconnect properly to KCP and KubeStellar without pulling the secret after a restart. So we are working on solving that issue. We think we potentially have a solution for it. As a side product also, we removed the requirement of running the KubeStellar deployment into the KubeStellar namespace. Now the namespace can be chosen by the user. Additionally, we enabled the possibility of creating a list or a set of user desired IMW and WNWs automatically. Those can be specified in the value file of the Helm chart. And I think that's pretty much it.
Okay.
The corresponding PR is 1077. If somebody wants to test it. Most of the testing so far has been done on OpenShift.
Okay, great. Thank you for the update. Anything here? Let's see. I think I'll get rid of the cert manager issue because that's being handled separately. Separate, this is good. This is good. I think we've already discussed that. Logging is there. Okay, I don't think, do we, Mike, did you write this in or?
Did, and so that was really just probably an attempt to more clearly identify what Franco meant. Franco talked about the consequence,
Right.
and it was not about network connections. It was about the fact that right now all our clients are using a particular credential that the KCP server creates as a special hack to make development easy, and that hack was not designed for the full breadth of our use case. So we need to stop using that hacky user, I think, and use a more proper user. And that's a new issue that has been revealed. So Franco, in my opinion, here has made progress. He has revealed an issue we've had all along. I don't think solving that issue needs to be done as part of this PR. It needs to be done. As usual, I think, you want to progress as incremental as possible. So I think, he's made a lot of progress here. I'd like to get this merged and then continue making more progress. We don't have to solve everything in one PR.
Okay, great. Thank you for the update. Okay, so let's move on to Brew. I know that the space framework is working on a Helm chart. Well, why would I? No, they were working on a Brew? No, were they working on a Helm? Yeah, no, this doesn't belong here. What did I put that in there for? Sorry. All right, let me put this in here. Then I do that, and then I do that, and then I do that. Okay, cool. So under so Space Framework is working on a Helm chart as well. There'll be options for, if I'm remembering it correctly, there'll be options to use different distributions such as KubeFlex, KCP, Kind as the underlying platform for the KubeStellar core, which is great. It'll improve flexibility of our platform and no longer solely reliant on KCP, which is fantastic. I think there's also the notion that we might even be able to use, let's say, if KubeStellar is installed on OpenShift, use OpenShift as the underlying platform. That's a future leading statement, but something that it could be desirable. So onto Brew. So I'm talking to folks internally about offline about what it might take to support Brew for plugins, our kubectl plugins. And so I think that would be very helpful for people that want to use this on their laptops, right? We have the KubeStellar core, which goes and is installed on a platform somewhere. We have the KubeStellar syncer, which goes on the target nodes that we want to synchronize workloads to. And then we have this plugin, these plugins for kubectl that we would like to have a client or a customer or a potential user use on their laptop, on their local system. So in order to do that, I think we need to separate the releases that we make now, instead of them just being all in one, that the releases themselves generate a core and a plugin specific tar so that can be accomplished. So we'll have some ongoing discussions on that, I'm sure, in the weeks ahead. Okay. Mike, anything you want to mention on 1031?
Yeah, that's for the one-to-one status return. You know, it's needs review. It's a major feature improvement that's been on our plate for a long time now. I want to get it done.
Okay. I think I saw Nick was another member of our community. I think Nick was starting to work with this. Nick, any updates there?
Yeah, so I initially ran through example one and I was having trouble completing that. And then Mike informed me that there was a flattening of the workspace structure. So once I implemented those changes, I was able to get fully through example one without errors. And then I noticed that Mike had added at the end of example one as part of this PR, looking at the replica sets to see that an executing count showed up. And I didn't see that, but I noticed that Mike made another update since I ran through my most recent trial where the YAML files that create the clusters have to have this extra parameter passed so that that field would then show up.
So I think what he's saying is that he did a test. I think he revealed an oversight of mine in updating example one. I've updated example one. I've run through it myself. I hope he can get back to it and confirm.
Cool. This is all good news. This is great. So thank you very much for your contribution, Nick, and thank you, Mike. Okay. June has completed his tour of Shanghai, and I think he'll be back in our next call, which will in 2 weeks. I'm pretty sure he'll be on this. So on the 7th, what do we got? 14 days, 19th. On October 19th, he should be back. So I think we'll hear an interesting report from him. See how many t-shirts he gave away. All right. And then for me, we haven't had any more discussions about booth space, but there is some discussion about the potential for there being some lightning talks in the booth. So I've signed up for one of those to give some a discussion on KubeStellar and where we're headed, where we've been. I've been asked to speak at the the IoT WG Edge. We've got about a 20 to 30, well, it's a 30-minute slot, 20 minutes for a talk, 10 minutes for questions, Q&A. I've got a co-presenter, person by the name of Joel, and he's out of Cisco, so it'll be Cisco and IBM talking about, traps for young players in the area of edge native applications, how to create them, design them so that you don't fall into the same types of traps that we've fallen into in the past. So things that we've learned and trying to impart that on the audience. The European Union in Paris, the next KubeCon will be held in, I believe, I want to say March, or no, it's either March or May. And so the idea here is for us to try and again submit talks for KubeStellar, and maybe at that point, maybe we even have CNCF Sandbox available as another way to get to be noticed. One of the things that I wanted to bring up in this call that's a bit tangential. So KCP, I believe, was voted on at the last CNCF Sandbox board meeting and was approved. So congratulations to KCP for forging ahead, being a little bit ahead of us. Congratulations. All right. Anything else that we would, okay, Mike, you've got some items there. We can do that before we do a triage. Would you like to talk a little bit about 1084, 1064, and 909? I can bring them all up.
If you like, or I can just talk through them, right? So based on your experience with CodeFlare MCAD, I've drawn some, and not only that, but some ideas here have come out, right? So so 1084, right? My view of this is really recognizing, I think, there's a principle that I had in mind, or concern that I've had in mind, that I kind of missed the fact that we violated it from the beginning, which is that we want to support scenarios where the workload objects are not maintained by the KubeStellar user. They're maintained by some third party. So we want the KubeStellar user, to, for example, to be able to say argo cd, put these objects, in my workload description space, and the objects are maintained by argo cd to be consistent with what's in Git. So we don't want to require the user to modify the objects. There are two special kinds of objects that are objects, but they also play a role, additional further role in setting context for objects, which is namespace and custom resource definition. So in particular, our design right now, in the way it expresses what objects, in the what predicate, the way the objects are identified, of course, we have to talk about the namespace. And right now, the only way the user can talk about the namespace that the object is in terms of labels on the namespace object. But again, that's violating our principle. That's requiring the user to make changes in this workload object, which is the namespace object. So the idea here is instead to say, no, let's give, I don't think we need to remove that option, but we should add an alternate way to give the users the option to talk about the namespace in terms of the name of the namespace, rather than labels on the namespace object. So that's this issue.
Okay. So I just dropped it in. I think it's a great idea. I like the wildcard support. Just curious if you think there would ever be a reason for us, and this would be good enough. If you think there would ever be a reason, just as a discussion, not as something to hold us up or make it harder to do, to support regex for this string.
Yeah, indeed. And that's really the question here, is how general do we want to be the expression on the names? And I don't know. So that's a good question. I'd love some feedback.
Okay. Does anybody in the community have any feedback they'd like to give on that? Regex versus a star for a wild card. Anybody have, Kevin, any thoughts there?
Also, you could ask, does it really need to be a list? Maybe we just want one single literal. I mean, there are choices, right? But the general point here is to just shift or to add the option to talk in terms of the namespace name rather than the labels.
Yeah, I think
there's
Kevin
design to do.
Yeah, I think Kevin just came off mute.
Yeah, I was gonna. Some of the labels and get so complicated that when you're trying to get status, if you're working with an edge system in particular, everything takes forever to type or to copy and paste. I'll tell you. So adding easier ways to find things would be really appreciated in those cases as a user, I can tell you.
Okay, good feedback. Anyone else with any feedback about Braulio?
I have not feedback, but just a question from Mike. So for the cluster scoped objects, I think we already identify each of them by the name. Is that correct?
Well, I have to ask now, are you talking about the old API in release 7 and earlier, or the current in main?
The current in main.
So, right. So we've already merged in main, but not got into a release, a unification and simplification of the way that the what predicate is expressed. And yes, there are a list of object names is part of it.
Okay, good. Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, Mike, we get 1064 is up in front.
Right. And this, I disagree with the title. I would characterize it a little bit differently. I would say that there was a issue I deferred when doing the placement translator at first. And I touched on it earlier, which is there are two special kinds of objects which are involved in creating the context in which other objects live, the namespace and the custom resource definition. And so what I did in the first pass on the placement translator, I put in some special handling for namespaces, did not put in special recognition of this special role of custom resource definitions. I required the user to explicitly ask for downsync of every custom resource definition that's needed. And that's just an unnecessary burden on the users. It'll take a little more implementation work to have the implementation figure out which custom resource definitions are needed. But I think that would be a good thing to do. It'll make it simpler for users to use, to not require them to explicitly identify the custom resource definitions as objects that are explicitly matched by the what predicate.
Okay. Yeah, I think this will be really welcome in the community. Thanks, Mike, for digging up the backlog. Well, actually, it's not a backlog item. It was a current item.
Well, it's a mental backlog. I think I should have written an issue for it. I never got around to writing it until you did earlier or recently.
Okay, great. Good to see that. Anybody want any comments on 1064? Has anybody bumped into having to deploy a custom resource definition using KubeStellar yet? Kevin, do you have any CRDs that you're deploying to your RPI configuration?
I still can't get example 1 to deploy to my RPI, so
Okay.
I've not got to custom yet. I have solved my my DNS problem. It turned out it was a weird hardware behavior in CentOS on the Pi. But
Okay, so I was going to ask you a question about that. Would you mind opening an issue that we could use as a placeholder for the future? Something that describes the situation and the scenario, and then so other people, when they read it, they'll think twice about this. I had a similar situation around 20 years ago that I was trying to resolve. It had to do, if you remember what a docking station was. They're not so prevalent now, but that used to interfere with coding work that I used to do way back in the day, where somebody would come into work and plug and put their laptop into a docking station, and it would change the IP addressing, DNS, and all the other good stuff. And and then when they took it home, they would try to VPN, and it wouldn't work because they had the wrong, they had a dead network connection. So something to,
that's still true, even with
Yeah.
a docking station, right? You just move a laptop, it gets a different IP address.
yeah. Well, this is why my Pis have static IP addresses. But yeah, it was the fact that the hardware for the Wi-Fi was live was putting a search term into the host resolver, which wasn't actually connecting to anything. And that was carrying into the cluster every time I deployed my WEC.
Right.
So we really need a way to actually be able to specify some more
interface.
Yeah, or some even just adding a hosts file that can be included in the WEC if we know we have to do something for resolution.
Yeah, I was thinking about this too, and I thought maybe just off the top of my head, I was thinking maybe there might be something in the values file in the Helm chart that could be which interface, like ETH0, WAN, LAN 0, etc., all that stuff, WLAN 0, whatever that. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's not. But your issue would be the beginnings of investigating that. Possibly.
Sure, I will open something.
All right, thank you, Mike.
I just want to caution, we're not the first people by any means to notice this feature of internet, and I recommend we not try to launch an SD-WAN project.
Yeah, no,
Point well taken.
Yeah, in this case, I knew where my machine was, and I couldn't understand why the Pi wasn't finding it inside the cluster when it could find it from the host.
Yeah.
So it was just baffling.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's more for awareness for the customer that comes to us and says, "Hey, why is this picking up the wrong address?" And doesn't put a finger on us. Okay, that was 1064. Let's go to 909. Help users debug their what predicates. Aha. Okay, this is cool. So, Mike, you want to give us an update on this?
Sure, right. This is something that I suggested a while. It was deferred, it's not urgent. I think your experience of the past few days has made it clear to me this is freaking urgent. We should have already had this done. You had no end of trouble writing a what predicate that actually accomplished what you needed to accomplish. So I think this is extremely urgent and would be extremely valuable.
Okay. So just to give you an idea of the types of things that I'm working on here, I actually came up with I'm coming up with a command to actually help me. This is that book that they write every so often, the missing commands in Kubernetes or something like that. So tell me just what is going on. And this is only giving me the results for the workload management workspace, right? And of course, I'll clean this up. But the idea here is tells me everything that's in the workload management workspace. And if I switch to, if I do a, let's see, Control WS, root colon ESP. Oh, that wasn't working. Hold on, WS root colon ESPW. And then if I switch context and then I run it again. So the idea here is I want to be able to compare those two. And so I'm writing a comparison next to do that. This is the missing get all that I've been looking for. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I was just going to point out, we already have in KubeStellar 3 utilities for listing contents. There's one that's a plain kube thing. It's called kube-watch all. And there's another one. There are two more. One is a fairly, if you look in the commands subdirectory of KubeStellar, you'll find them. And two more. One that is, I think, multi-cluster aware, KCP specific. And there's another one that is a client of the, what does I call it? There's a watch, an API watch, a library in KubeStellar. And so the third one is built on top of that library for multiple reasons. And these output stuff in CSV format, so that it's particularly easy to process in programs.
Yeah, all I want to do effectively is find out what the difference is between what's in my workload management workspace and what's in my mailbox. And
Right.
so
So my point,
that's what the watch all command does, then
have a look at it.
I will.
And if, yeah, I think you'll find CSV easier to parse than freeform text. And if you wanted to request that it be, that there be an option to output it in JSON instead, certainly, that's a small, easy change.
Yeah, I didn't know what that command did until now. Okay, cool. Thanks for that update. All right. Anybody, any questions on issue 909? Okay. Okay, we're at half past the hour. I'll look back on the agenda, see if anybody else has imparted anything. I don't think there is. Getting less unserious about versioning. I'm gonna guess Mike put that there.
Yes, I did.
Okay. Mike, anything you want to mention there?
Yeah, again, one of the problems now that we're making interface changes, we need to be, I think, and we have population now that is, particularly now that we have some people that are getting stuck on old versions, there's a real mixed population of versions that are running around and relevant. So I think we need, and you've made a point about this too, right? And I agree. We need to have some actual checking. So I think that there's a couple things to say about interface. There are really two sorts of interfaces. Actually, we have three sorts of interfaces. Right. So there's, for example, there's the Kubernetes APIs. Kubernetes API machinery has versioning technology that thus far we have not attempted to use. I think we should use that. That would be a strict improvement over what we've been doing so far. And in fact, our not doing it is really just a matter of we thought we could get away with it because we were moving fast and breaking things and very early on. I think we've now got to the point where we now have to do that. So in particular, we've merged in PR 884 an API change, and we should have incremented the major version number on the API because that's a backward incompatible change. And as I said earlier, there's a couple more interface changes coming. We should be regularly incrementing the version, doing the usual stuff now. We got to the point where we should be mature enough to follow the usual Kube API evolution rules and practices. There's another interface that matters, which is we're evolving the Helm chart and the structure of what it looks like in kube terms when you deploy the KubeStellar core as workload in a Kubernetes cluster. Now, that's not an interface that people see. The third interface is the interface that people see, which is the commands they issue. And those commands are issued by code we write that makes assumptions about what is in the Helm chart. So as we change the structure of what the Helm chart puts in the hosting cluster, we have to change the implementation of these commands. So there's a consistency that needs to be checked. It's an internal interface. We should be versioning that internal interface, not because users care about it, but because our client and server code side stuff just won't match up, might not match up because of this progress. And there, I think, again, there's existing technology. Helm charts have versions. Charts have versions. So I think we should be using chart versions to reflect in the usual semantic version way changes in this the interface, which is the structure of what the chart puts in the hosting cluster.
Okay. Okay, very good. All right. Is there any other general topics that we have to discuss here before we move on to some triage? Okay, I'm just gonna grab this. I think this is a different view. So I want to make sure I get it right. 17 now. Okay, 1 second, please. Please hold. Of course, that isn't going to work. Okay, very good. All right, so if you want to follow along with me, click, we're in KubeStellar/projects/2/views/17. So we don't have anybody to talk about KCP decoupling, but we covered at the top of the call. This is what I did was summarize the list of issues that are located here. You have some items that are we're working on that are more of a client-facing nature. So we've got a few issues that have been identified. We have one in particular, the placement translator was failing on a logging error. And so that's been repaired. So it looks like, and that'll make it in the next version. So that's great. Thank you. Got some sticky namespaces. I think we've heard people discuss this before. I remember Ronan reporting something similar to this, but it's not really something that's stopping us from doing any effective work, so it's not really a high priority. The watch all discussion that we just had a bit ago might be the answer to 1074, so I'll look that up a little later today. I've found some other things in my testing where I've actually found that the kube config falls out of alignment on the client that I'm using on my laptop with what's actually in the KubeStellar core that I believe that I'm working with. And so I've had some issues that have come up with that. I don't have anything that I can say past I've been observing it, but I'll keep an eye on it. Yeah, Mike.
Is it issue 920?
920. Let's see.
Everybody should start every day with reading issue 920.
No, this isn't the WS thing, if that's what you're getting at. But I'll look at it. You're talking about, yeah, no, it's not that. This is just in general, like, I think it has a lot to do with, there's a couple times where I've seen this. I actually had a call with Nick at one point, and I was teaching him, or was trying to teach him some things about how to use some of the WS command to move around and see the kinds of objects that are located. So for instance, I was looking specifically for locations and sync targets inside the IMW, inside the inventory. And it kept coming up with no resources, no resources, no resources. I know no time passed between the time I hung up the phone with him and I issued the command again, and it came back, and I didn't change anything. So you know, I'm keeping an eye on it. Yes, Paolo, did you have a comment here?
Yes, I did stumble on this one, on this 920, and I spent some time trying to figure out what the heck was going on. And Mike then pointed this to me, but this is not very sort of prominent in our gotcha, in our docs or anywhere. So this is something I guess a lot of people may accidentally type kubectl WS and then get into trouble. So I think we should have somewhere in a place that people can easily see this as a gotcha that people will fall into. And I don't know there's anything we can do about this, because this is really the behavior of the plugin, or the WS, I guess, plugin.
Yeah, I've challenged it upstream in the KCP community, but more importantly, I think when we adopt the space abstraction layer, we can hide this harmful behavior on our own.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, thank you for that. All right. Talked a few about a couple other of these items. One in particular was, I know that I think I saw Paolo reported on this. This is about, you know, the syncer going offline, not knowing if it's, you know, if it's offline, which is acceptable, right? Disconnected operations, and potentially for how long it's gone offline. And if it doesn't meet the expectation of the user that the target should be offline for that amount of time, then it prods the you know, the operator to go and have a look. In my case, I found that, you know, that the syncer had stopped communicating with the mailbox because of a TLS issue, right, or certificate issue. So while we are trying to get to the root cause of that, it's also probably a pretty good idea to have to report back. You know, when was the last time we heard from that target? Okay. I've bumped into a couple things with installing operators on OpenShift, and it would be nice for us to be able to do it out of the box, so to speak, if we're deploying a target to a OpenShift target. Things like subscriptions and operator group CRDs would be necessary in order to support that. Not something by default we have. Of course, the other discussion was about having custom resource definitions supported by default also. That's, you know, that's a step in the right direction, and I think there's just a little bit more here. Maybe there's something here, maybe there's not. We'll have to see. Yeah, Mike, go ahead.
You know, I think there's something deep here. The shallow stuff is more of the same other problems you had with CRDs in general. But, you know, aside from all that, there's something deep here, which is operators, in the way that Red Hat has conceived them, are a way of delivering applications. And in particular, an operator includes an active controller that creates a custom resource definition or submits it to the API server.
It's a good point.
Okay, so the operator is not really part of using an operator involves running something, and currently our interface involves these workload description spaces that don't run anything. Okay, so there's a mismatch there. We have to figure out how to deal with it.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Mike. So yeah, even beyond the operator, right? So it's not really. I'm okay with the way that, you know, the way to support an operator, maybe, let's just say, for the intern, because it's a very general thing that most people use. When you get into things like individuals, like, you know, let's say it's Grafana or Prometheus or something like that you're installing, then yes, some of them come with their own set. Most of them come with their own set of CRDs, and because we don't run anything, you're not getting that created. So you're
No, I want to say something that's delivered with CRDs, that's fine, right? And that's what Jana just demonstrated many months ago with Kyverno. Okay, he used the Helm chart. It delivers CRDs, fine. Okay, and in fact, part of it, he went through exactly the same issue. He deliberately chose to use the Helm chart instead of the operator. Okay, because Kyverno is available both ways. The Helm chart works for us already out of the box. End of story.
Interesting.
The Helm, it's the operators because of the requirement to run something.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So the Helm, it makes, you know, doesn't make any assumptions about what exists, so supplies everything. And then the operator, it's less comprehensive, or not the same as a Helm chart in that respect. That's a good point. That's a good thing to point out. Thank you for educating us, Paolo.
Yeah, just to want to add to what Mike was saying, that the sort of the operator deployment is on subscription. In the end, what you deliver actually gets pulled down is a so-called cluster service version that is essentially is a bundle. Inside it has pretty much everything. The deployment, the script, it's like, imagine like kind of in a Helm kind of thing where you have everything within that cluster service version as a bundle. So there will be the CRD, there will be cluster roles, deployment, everything is pretty much there. That's what the OLM operator running on OpenShift cluster will actually unbundle and apply to install the actual operator.
Right. So insofar, my experience has been so far with the operators that I've installed, and it's been about 4 or 5 now in the last couple days, I've only had to supply the subscription in the operator group CRD in order to get them bootstrapped. So I haven't had any issue with that. And then beyond that, I can assume that the operator's been installed and simply give invoke or define or yeah, place into the manifest what the description or of the CRD that I want to use, or the KFDEF, or so I haven't had much trouble in that way. I think where I'm having, so Helm, good, as long as the Helm chart uses that general methodology, right? That accepted practice of that good practice, right? Of including CRDs with its deployment and not assuming that they exist and making you go elsewhere to get them. So that's the gauge of the Helm chart's maturity. Operator, not so bad either. I think operator's fine. There's just a couple of things that we have to include and then they work fine. Where I think we start to get a little wonky is when we start to talk about, let's cobble together our own deployment or our own manifest that has certain things in it. Now we have to start looking all over the place for including separate pieces and parts, right? Separate resources to support it. Yeah, Mike.
So we probably don't want to get deep into problem solving in this meeting. I'll just mention 2 thoughts that I had, and this is just 2 initial thoughts. We need to, this is something that needs more thought in breadth and depth. One idea, it reminds me of the issue with Kube-bind. To get Kube-bind working, we need to have a connector per consumer space. A connector is something that runs, right? And spaces are nominally don't run anything, but I have suggested that the space abstraction layer gain a concept of plugin, which can get something running in every space, or for every space more precisely.
Interesting.
So maybe part of the solution here is another space plugin that can do some level of unwrapping involved with the operator. Maybe not. Another way to do it is to say, look, again, the point here is that the spaces don't run things. The WECs do run things, right? The point, you really want to deliver the operator in some sense. If the operator is the application, you want to deliver it to the WEC. Let it run in the WEC. We've got upsync. Maybe we can use upsync to solve the problem. Let's upsync the CRDs that are needed from the operator.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought about upsync also. Yeah,
So just spitballing here. We need more thought in breadth and depth.
I get it. Yeah, I think there's an implication for upsync here that might help us. I thought the same thing. Paulo.
Yeah, I had, by the way, I had last year when I was doing a demo, I had a similar issue, what you have indeed, that was to deliver both the subscription and also the operand, pretty much what was needed to be created after the operator actually comes up. And I was doing that with Crossplane. They had a provider called Kubernetes provider that allow you to deliver some objects to a managed cluster. It's a push model, so it's not very scalable. I wouldn't say that is a good replacement for what we are doing with KubeStellar. But the point is they were using something called object, right? They're this kind of wrapper. And within that, I could put the subscription. And then, the wrapper, I could put also the operand, for example, KDEF in case. And then there was basically the controller, the controller of this provider was unwrapping both, was applying both, but because it was sort of retrying, the second one until the operator came up. Of course, one of them was failing, but when the operator came up and the CRD was applied and everything was up and running, finally, eventually, everything was up and running. So I actually had the ability to do exactly to solve this problem that you mentioned. So I installed the operator and then have the operand, and everything eventually was up and running and consistent.
Right. Yeah. So that's what I included in my manifest, right? Is I included the CRD for subscription, included the CRD for operator group, and then I included the operand, right? The KFDEF that needed to be done in store. And this is for ODH. So as long as I included those three things, I could swap out and put not those three things, but two of those three things are needed for any operator. And I could effectively put any operator directive in there, and I could put any operand alongside it. Yeah, Mike.
Yeah, I think the key idea in what Paulo said is that if you want to support operators generically, the problem here is how does the operand get delivered? And I think the idea there was the answer is it gets delivered in a wrapper. So something that is delivering without waiting for CRDs to take effect. If we define what the wrappers look like, then the wrapping object can be delivered immediately without waiting for anything to take effect.
Well, yeah, so I didn't have to wait for anything. I sent it alongside, and then eventually, as soon as the subscription and the install plan were complete, it did what Kubernetes does, right? It reconciles. So
Yeah, I think, again, I don't fully understand. I think you did something that we don't want to ask users to regularly do,
yeah,
because you did manually the
right,
execution of the operator,
yeah,
right? So yeah, anyway, I don't think we
I
want to
get it.
spend a lot more time in this meeting.
No, I get it. I think it's an important topic to discuss because we're going to get, I think we have three different modes of, or three different types of packages we're going to receive from most users, right? One is Helm, one is operator, and the other is you just wrapped your own. You just gave us, you dumped on us a whole bunch of stuff and a whole bunch of workload items, and we now need to deliver it. So I think there's strategies for how to handle all three, right? And I think we should just, in most cases, Helm will be mature enough that it delivers all the parts and pieces, but then again, maybe it's not. So we can't completely make the assumption that the Helm will be as complete as it needs to be in order to get things up and running. The same as, there's different set of considerations for an operator, as we've just discussed here. And there's another set of considerations on guiding a user when they've fallen off the track and said, "Oh, I'm just going to cobble some things together and put them in, manifest." Not in the manifest. I'll cobble some things together and dump them on the workload management workspace, and then it complains and says, "Hey, we don't have enough here to do what you want us to do." So yeah, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, again, I want to say I don't think Helm and operators are mutually exclusive. I think you can use Helm to deliver an operator. I think the point is we have a gap we need to work on for operators.
Yeah, all I'm doing is bridging the gap between all I'm doing is bridging the gap between an operator and what we're trying to do. Okay, cool. So I asked for another little embellishment, the clusters :all label for a locations selector, as we call it internally, the where predicate. So this might be useful to have for people who have small installations who want to simply just address all the clusters that they have rather than, or all the targets that they have rather than one at a time. This might be useful. I think by default right now, we include in our location, we include the name of the cluster itself. And so I think it would be useful to have a grouping in there as well across all clusters. And then that'll give the people the idea on how to use things like regionally or sovereign or whatever scheme they come up with. Okay, this is more about detecting versions. We'll talk, and we've talked a bit about that already today. Simplified diagram. We've got some input there already. And thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Paulo. And I've got some more coming that I'm working on. Of course, we already talked about this as well. Split KubeStellar's release into core and plugins. That's under discussion. So this way we can more effectively deliver plugins that match the backend core, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that's all I want to go through for MCC right now. let's get on to the high priority items to finish out the call. All right. So we've got this epic that's open 8:59. Kevin, Franco, I believe that should satisfy that epic, the work that you're doing for Helm, or is this something you think you would put here, items to consider next? Is that something you would think that the epic should stay open, or what do you think?
I think the epic should close with the merge of the PR 1077.
Okay,
Should go along with it.
very good.
Most of the item in it. So we agreed not to use the external, the KCP original Helm chart for the moment, right?
Mhm. Okay,
I'm hoping that to satisfy the some of the changes that were requested, merge the PR this week, hopefully.
okay, thank you. All right, 772, anything, there's been some movement there. I think, Nick, you've been testing with this, and we had a discussion about that. Thank you for your help there. And that's related to 1031. That's good. This will also contribute back to 605 when June returns to us from KubeCon. Let's see, I'm thinking, way to add it. Nope, nothing there. Okay, and then the idea of Brew installer, this is separating into two different, okay, cool. All right, let's see if we got anything else here. Prepare for NA. Okay, yeah, this is a good one. So 656, Paulo, since you're on the call, can you give us any update on Kube-bind and Kubeflex? Have you done any more work with the team?
No, we haven't really done more because there were other issues, I guess, to sort out first.
Okay.
Right. So you're asking, this was a part of the discussion with Jun about somehow deploying Kube-bind with Kubeflex spaces, right? That was the issue that I think we have an idea how to proceed. I think we have to figure out first the other problems we use in Kube-bind. Then I don't think this will be I think we have some idea how to solve this.
Okay, good. Yeah, so just FYI, like some of the priorities that I see with us coming at us, in the open source community, one of which is the CNCF sandbox application. I think we go back up for vote mid-December. So I think the idea would, it would be nice for us to be able to commercialize and socialize, I guess is the better term to use, to socialize our decoupling and maybe to showcase our decoupling using other than KCP as a backend platform to be able to use KubeFlex and Kind. So it would be great if we could block and tackle towards making that happen sometime mid-November. I just setting some kind of an expectation, if we don't mind.
Okay. Yeah, once June is back, we can have a look to see where we are with that.
Excellent. All right, cool. All right. kubectl plugin should be based on proper org. This is overlap. KubeStellar's control plane. Okay. Any updates on space, on the exploration of space, Kevin?
Not really. Part of it has been stymied by my experiments getting stuck with namespace. A continuing conversation with Jonas and Zurich about terminology has yielded some interesting history about the term pod, which was leading to some confusion on their part because they think of a pod as essentially a semi-trailer that contains an entire computing system you attach to your data center.
Oh my God.
As a physical computing pod. So we're going to add Kubernetes or Kube to the Kubernetes specific instances in our future conversations to clarify things.
Okay, very good. All right, thanks for that update. All right, we've got about 4 minutes left here. Is there anything in the new column that should come front and center? So I think debugging, we've got one for debugging there. What predicates, keeping in mind that, the month is underway, the sprint is underway, and, we have enough on our plate to actually tackle, I think, right now. But is there anything else from this list that we'd like to to include in this sprint. We have wildcards and resource names, resource types in edge placement objects to be lowercase, transition use of user credentials, update documentation on how the syncer is built. I think that's lower priority right now. Namespace is not deleted on execution cluster when deleted in a space. That's actually a client-facing bug. Incorrect way of updating status on object. Hosting cluster missing KubeStellar server on Bootstrap. And documentation no longer specifies Go and version. CI does not test building the central container image. Any of these items that should come forward, either as a matter of it wouldn't take a lot of time to do it, to fix it, or it's a priority. Hey, let's get our heads together and talk about it. Anybody have any ideas? Mike?
Yeah, you know, I hear a lot, and I think it's probably right. We want to focus on the deployment style of deploying the core as workload in a kube cluster. That requires that we test it in CI. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, where is that? That's a good point. I don't have it. Do I have it here? Support, deploy, workload packages, Helm chart. No. There's something about, I saw the CI thing and I don't see it on this list. Did you put it in a sprint?
Yeah, I thought so. I may have forgotten that part. There is an issue for it. And
Yeah.
so it's just not optional. And I think we need to do it soon.
Okay. Let me get this, let me see if I can find it. This is not going to find it, but, oh, maybe it does. Is this it? Yeah, it's in sprint 5.
Yes, that's the one.
No status. How did that happen? Wow. All right.
You may not see it, but I still frequently get emails about workflow stuff failing to run on my new issues that I create.
I usually see those and I don't see it. All right, so if you're getting those, then I guess I've got to pay closer attention to that because this is interesting. What does that mean? 2 more choose. Okay, right. Okay, let's put this into. I don't have enough here to think about it as in but we have to. I'm trying to think where should it go? I mean, I know it's maybe we do put it in high priority. Huh?
Yeah, I think it's high
Yeah.
priority. I
Okay.
think, you know, it's just we have to have it, and the longer we go without it, we're exposed to hurting ourselves.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. All right. Anybody else with any other items, Mike, or anybody else? Oh, here's the no status. It was over here, Mike. Just didn't float over. I should have gone into new, but it didn't. I don't know why. Okay. All right, everybody. Thank you all for your time and attention. Please feel free to interact with us on our Slack channel. It's in the Kubernetes organization under KubeStellar KubeStellar-dev. And so I encourage you all to float over there and continue the conversation. And we'll talk again in 2 weeks. Thanks all.
Thank you.